Now, as you approach task 1, you should try to imagine that you are explaining this information to someone who does not have access to it. The scenario that I often imagine is that you are working at a company and you have some kind of technical ability, some technical knowledge, okay? And you need to explain this technical information to your boss, your manager. Now, your manager needs to understand this information, but the manager might not need to know the super fine details, or the manager may need to understand the idea behind this research or this data, but doesn't really need to know the specifics that well. Okay? Imagine that your manager doesn't have the kind of technical knowledge that you have. Okay? So you need to kind of explain it to someone like that, to someone who doesn't understand it that well. It needs to be really clear, what is the point of that data? What is the point of that information? And that's where the word story comes in. You should try to communicate the story that the information tells. The highest scoring Band 9 Task 1 essays sort of tell a story with the data. The way that you organize the paragraphs should be logical, based on the story that you are telling. Okay? So the way you organize the paragraphs of your essay, which we will discuss in just a moment, always try to remember that you can't just organize it randomly. It has to be logical based on what you're trying to express. Okay? So I want you to think about that as you practice. Think about telling a story with the information to someone who may not understand the topic very well, not as well as you. Okay? Now, your essay will consist of 4 parts. We start with an introduction, then an overview, and then 2 body paragraphs. Now, you will see examples of the overview being put at the end of the essay as a kind of summary or a conclusion. That is possible, okay? You will see all of my examples put the overview toward the beginning of the essay, after the introduction, but before the body paragraphs. It's your choice, but I recommend following my models instead of using a conclusion, okay? My recommendation, put it before the body paragraphs. Now let's look at this example. You can read along with me there. The graph below shows the total number of overseas visitors, in thousands, to a country between 1987 and 2007. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. And look at the information there. Just if you want, you can even pause the video here and just take a little while to understand what this information is showing. What is the story of this information? Notice how the mountains increase very gradually there at the bottom, right? Notice the coast, which kind of started as the most popular destination, kind of dropped, right, in 1992, and then rose and became, again, the most popular destination for tourists or visitors. And then notice the countryside. Look at how popular the countryside is now compared to in 1987. Or, I guess not now, but in 2007, look at how popular the countryside is. And then look back at 1987, right? With the height of popularity being in 1997. Okay? So think about that as a story. That's the story we're trying to communicate. Okay? It's really easy to think of a story when we have years or a timeline like this. But even with a map, okay, or with a line graph, or well, this is a line graph, but a bar chart, okay, or a pie chart, still that information is telling us a story, even if it's not a story through time. Okay, there is a message to that information. Now, we want to start the essay with an introduction. That introduction should be one sentence, and it should restate the original prompt. So remember, the original prompt, the graph below shows the total number of overseas visitors to a country between 1987 and 2007. We want to restate that prompt such as this. The pictured graph depicts information regarding international tourism to 3 regions of a country over a 20-year period from 1987 to 2007. Okay? You don't want to copy from the prompt. You want to restate the prompt. That's what the examiner wants to see. Let's look at the overview next. Now, the overview provides us with the big message, the moral of the story. In general, what does the information tell us? We need to step back and look at the big picture of this essay, or this information that we're given. Read with me. Overall, tourism to the country rose steadily as the total number of visitors to the country increased during each 5-year period. In addition, while tourism to the coast and the mountains showed moderate gains in popularity, the ability of the countryside to attract tourists rose more dramatically. Okay, so the first sentence of there, we're looking really big picture and saying this country is gaining more and more tourists every 5-year period. Okay, we're not even comparing the different areas yet. We're looking really big picture. The second one, we just try to give the biggest, most obvious trend that's going on in this research, which is that the countryside has gained dramatically over these 20 years. The other two have gained somewhat. Okay, so just really big picture, no specific details, no numbers in here yet. Okay, and nothing specific, very general, just 1 or 2 sentences. In body 1, we want 2 or 4 sentences, or 2 to 4 sentences, that reveal 1/2 of the details in this information. So you see the numbers we have here and a lot of change vocabulary. So read with me. The first 10 years saw a meteoric rise in tourism to the countryside, from 10,000 visitors in 1987 to 62,000 in 1997. In contrast, the number of visitors to the coast and to the mountains changed less dramatically, falling by 2,000 and rising by 6,000 respectively. Okay, so how did the writer decide to divide between body 1 and body 2? 1/2 of the details. This one is actually quite easy because we have a 20-year period. So in body 1, we use the first 10 years. And notice at the very beginning of this paragraph, we make it very clear how we are dividing it, right? The first 10 years, The reader knows exactly how we are splitting up the details here. Body 1, the first 10 years. Body 2 will be the second 10 years. Okay, notice the 2 sentences there, and I have contrasted the trends, choosing to highlight the countryside in the first sentence, okay, because that one went up, right? And then, or went up dramatically, a meteoric rise. And then the second sentence, we describe the mountains and the coast, because it didn't really change very much. Pretty small change there. Okay, skip back in the video if you want to see the actual data again, so you can see what I mean. Now in body 2, as we predicted, we're going to see the second half of this period from 1997 to 2007. Notice how the writer has made it very, very clear from the beginning of this first sentence what the topic of this paragraph will be, that 10-year period. We also see that the writer chose 2 sentences, and again, these 2 sentences contrast with each other. So read with me. From 1997 to 2007, the coast regained its original position as the most popular destination, peaking at 70,000 visitors. In the meantime, the popularity of the mountains as a tourist destination continued to climb steadily to 50,000 in 2007, while the number of visitors to the countryside dropped by 7,000 to finish at 55,000. Okay, so we have separated, the coast as being the kind of special, among the three, the coast is the one with the most unique or kind of special thing to mention. So we've used the coast first, and then the second sentence combines the mountains and the countryside as the other two. Now you could very easily write 3 sentences here instead of 2. Okay, but this writer is showing off sort of advanced level of cohesive devices, mixing all of that information into one quite long sentence there as the second one. Let's go over a couple of quick other tips before we move on to the next section. There should be no conclusion, as I mentioned. Okay? As I said, I prefer to use the overview at the beginning of the essay, not at the end. Okay? Second, the body paragraphs do not need to mirror the overview. Often your overview will have 2 sentences. Some candidates make the mistake of writing body 1 matching the first sentence of their overview and body 2 matching the second sentence of the overview. You don't need to do that. The overview should look more big picture. It's a different perspective in the overview, talking about the message of the information, right? The separation between body 1 and body 2 should be strictly about how to separate the details in the information most clearly and most logically. Okay, but they don't have to match the overview. Finally, I get this question a lot. Do I have to compare and contrast? Often the prompt will say, compare and contrast where relevant. Okay? And that means you do not always have to compare and contrast. Okay? Don't force yourself to compare, right? As you're telling the story, you should naturally do some comparison, but don't force yourself to do too much.